that's great about living in the 2020s is the number of digitized primary resources that we have at our fingertips. In this lesson, I want to quickly give you a summary of how to think about using a primary source in your research, and specifically, I want to look at how you analyze a primary source that you've never seen before. Now, when you're starting a new research project, a lot of students want to go with something they've heard about before or something that interests them or something that feels familiar. And that's perfectly fine in your research to pursue something like that. But what I like to do is find something that I am not familiar with, to pull up something and see where the research takes me. So rather than driving my research in a direction that shuts down the possibilities, I try to pursue research that opens up possibilities. And to do that, sometimes I just dive into some primary sources. And today, what I've pulled up for you is the Burney newspapers collection that is provided through our university library via the Gale. And what you can see here is I have pulled up the Public Advertiser newspaper from December 14th, 1764. It was a Friday that day, and it's issue 9397. Other than that, I know nothing about this document. I pulled up this document with no clue what's in this. I am discovering it with you as I talk to you. When you are getting into primary source databases, it's quite useful to know what you're looking at as far as the database goes, so that you can navigate a little better. So just to give you some sense of what's here. So on the right hand side, obviously we have the newspaper, and there are a number of things that we can do to the newspaper. For example, we can make it full screen so it's a little easier to read for us if we wanted. Or at the top right here, we can download it or print it out or get the link over here. If we click on Cite, we can in fact pull up the citation tools and cite it in our preferred citation style, which of course is the Chicago Manual of Style for history. On the left-hand side here, you can search the document. Now, this is great. You can search within the document. However, I would warn you against searching for things. They might help you find stuff, but they also leave out a lot of stuff. So you will notice that when you start looking at these letters, they don't look like modern day letters all of the time. And for example, S's and F's can be very confusing for for an OCR scanner. That's the thing that converts the image into text. And so you miss a lot of stuff if you just use the searches. That said, it can help you find some stuff that you want. And of course, you can see table of contents, etc. But really, what I want to look at here is the newspaper, and we can see a few things here. So if we just look at this newspaper, it looks different than a modern day newspaper in certain ways. For example, a modern day newspaper would focus on images, right? The first thing we would probably see is a big headline with a big image. In this period, you're not going to see that because there's no cameras. So in order to create an image, it has to be engraved or carved, and it can take quite a long time to do. So if you do see an image like we see down here, these are usually stock images that get put into the newspaper. But that being said, a lot of it looks familiar. The newspaper is in columns. It reads from left to right. You go down the columns this way. It's pretty straightforward here as far as that goes. You'll also see that it is 4 pages. So if you think about that, there's a front and a back and a front and a back. So if you were looking at the newspaper, it would just kind of be a a, a paper folded in half to make 4 sides, and that's the 4-side newspaper that you're looking at. So let us zoom in a little bit further so we can kind of see what we're looking at here. So again, you have the newspaper title, you have the date over here. These were copied for microfilm at one point, so that accounts for some of the some of the poor copy here. These were not scanned with laser scanners like we have today. They were converted usually from microfilm to laser scanners. But you'll also see that some of the text from the other side has come through. That is the nature of working with historical documents such as this. Now, this is called the public advertiser, so it might give you a sense of what you're looking at. Maybe it is a public advertiser. And the first thing that you see here is a title advertisement or something from the police, and it's signed Jay Fielding. I would encourage you to go look up to see who Jay Fielding is. You'd learn an awful lot about the 18th century by pursuing him. But it says here that the extensive sale of the public advertiser, joined to the variety of channels through which it passes, has always been the means of detecting of many robberies and of apprehending so many offenders that it may be proper to give this public notice that for the future all informations of this kind sent to Bow Street will be constantly inserted in this paper, and if not, and if such information are properly attended to by pawnbrokers, jewelers, silversmiths, stable keepers, buyers of secondhand cloths, etc., few robberies will escape detection, especially if all persons robbed make use of this paper to advertise their losses in. Okay, this, again, I pulled up this newspaper to see it for the first time. This is the first time I'm seeing it. So this is kind of an exciting piece of historical evidence. I want to come back to this now and look at this closer, because this will help us think about how we closely read a document. Okay, so when I start with a primary document, I like to get a general sense of its layout. So I will zoom through it as far as we're doing right here. So looks like we have an advertisement for theater here, more theater over here. So this is a Shakespeare play, music performance over here. It looks like if we go over here, some things that are published that people are advertising in the newspaper. Here's a caution to the public. Okay, whereas John Page, Esquire, to whom the late Mr. Joshua Ward left his valuable receipts, has entrusted the care of the sale of the medicines made by the said receipts to us, and has given the profits arising therefrom to charitable uses. And you can go down here. It looks like, oh, there's John Fielding again. So it could possibly be that we're dealing with a police case here if we're looking at this, and it's suggested by a caution to the public, and then we have John Fielding down here. So then we have an advertisement for medicine, the white drop for the scurvy. This is a tincture of sage being advertised here. Over here, we have another set of publications to be sold. Here's some ship news. So this is plantation and country news. And we can learn a little bit perhaps here about what's happening in the British colonies, perhaps, and the nature of empire. I'm not reading through it, but we might be able to find that there. Let's see down here. These are letters to the printer of the public advertiser. So the captain in His Majesty's Navy will ever retain the most feeling sense of the very honorable mention of Sergeant. Often in the 18th century, the last names were not included. Sometimes you can figure out what they are by context. Was pleased to make of them the 10th instant that would be the 10th of the month, on a trial at Guildhall, wherein one of them was defendant. Mr. Sergeant conducted the plaintiff's cause without the least incident or vindictive expression, to his great honor and general satisfaction of the captain of the Navy. So something happened as far as a court case goes. This person's complimenting this person. Might be worth looking out to see what the court case was. Okay, this is the second page of the newspaper. This is the third page of the newspaper. And this is the fourth page of the newspaper. And you can kind of see here on the fourth page, if the third page had what appears to be advertisements, or a good number of advertisements here. So we have new music, a publication, music. So there's a number of things that are happening, probably mostly in London. There, it looks like there's an advertisement about a ship that has just arrived. Let's see here. Just landed and to be sold at the Italian warehouse, at the sign of the oil jar and 2 flasks opposite Pall Mall in the Haymarket, a fine parcel of double and white yellow narcissus roots, looks like here. Oh, so look, an Italian and Dutch jacinth roots. They could be selling tulips, perhaps. I'm not sure what these are. Narcissus and jacinth roots. I don't know. Truffles and morels. So they're selling mushrooms. They're selling vermicelli pasta, Parmesan cheese, orange flower water. So these are these are things that are coming from across Europe and being sold in the city. So you can kind of get a sense of how things are sold in the city, what kinds of things people might be interested in, what kinds of things might be seen as exotic. So the newspapers from this period are full of incredibly interesting things that can get you to start asking questions and drive your research in new directions. On this final page here, we finally get to some news here. And mostly it's ship landings and where they're leaving from and where they're going and who the captains are. Okay, here we have plantation news. So this is from Newfoundland. These are country news. So this is from York over here. So you can find out what's happening around the country. And then you have letters being written here. And often they're being written by under pseudonyms. So this is Humanus. And these are really great because what you can find often in here are concerns that are happening, and they happen over multiple issues. So sometimes somebody will place a concern or a critique or an observation, and other people will respond, and then they'll respond back, and you can kind of get a sense of what the dialogue and what the conversations are happening on the ground. You can get a sense of what medicine looks like during this period. So these are doctors selling patent medicines and drops here. So more publications over here. So sometimes you have sales of property. You have all kinds of things that you can find in these newspapers. And instead of looking for the thing you're looking for, if you let the newspapers guide you, something might emerge. And so I return us back here to the top of our newspaper and go back here and look at this police, the statement by the police here. Okay. So this advertisement tells us something about the city. So let's do a close reading of what is happening here. So the extensive sale of the Public Advertiser. Okay, so this is the Public Advertiser. This is the newspaper. It seems that this is an incredibly popular newspaper. So this is good to know because this information that is in the Public Advertiser is getting into the hands of a lot of people. So it might be representative of the type of publication that most or many people are reading in London at this time. Joined to the variety of channels through which it passes. Now this brings up an interesting question. What are the variety of channels through which it passes? In our contemporary world, typically a person purchases a newspaper, and they don't even do it physically anymore. They do it digitally, and they read it individually to themselves in the privacy of their house or whatnot. In this period, however, you have taverns and you have coffee houses and you have clubs where people are reading these newspapers in public spaces and exchanging the news of the day with each other. Now, in London at this time, literacy rates were incredibly high, but you still might have people reading out things from the newspaper to people in the coffee house, and they're learning from each other and conversing with each other. And these are the types of channels through which news would pass. And so if you were doing a project on how news functions and how information is passed in the 18th century, this kind of evidence might be interesting and or useful to you. So it has always been a means of detecting of many robberies and apprehending many offenders. So, okay, Public Advertiser is telling us, or at least this advertisement within the Public Advertiser is telling us that this newspaper, if we were interested in the history of the police or the history of robbery or the history of crime more generally, the Public Advertiser might be a good place to find information out about that. So maybe we start reading the Public Advertisers and seeing what types of people are being apprehended, what they're being apprehended for, what they are getting in trouble for doing. Here we go. They're going to start putting their advertisements in this paper, and they encourage other people to put the information in the newspaper, so that pawnbrokers, jewelers, silversmiths, stable keepers, buyers of secondhand cloth will learn about this. So if you're a pawnbroker and you know somebody has stolen a watch, you might be on the lookout for that watch and the person who's trying to pawn it. Or if somebody has stolen a ring, if you were a jeweler, you might be on the lookout for the ring, etc. Let's say a saddle was stolen, maybe a stable keeper it keeps their eye on what is coming and going as far as the stable goes. And buyers of secondhand cloths. And this is pretty interesting because there is a massive market in 18th century London for secondhand clothing that gets repurposed. And so if you were stealing linens or stealing clothes, there is a whole secondhand market for this. And frankly, that would make a really interesting research project as well, to see what people are stealing and what value it has on the market and how it moves through the society at the time and why it moves through the society, why secondhand cloth is so important. So this is just a quick read of a very small, 5-line advertisement in a newspaper that can point us in 3, 4, 5, 6 different research directions, and we didn't even come looking for it. It just appeared to us. And frankly, if you went through this newspaper, I'm betting you could at least get 20 different research projects just out of this newspaper. So I would encourage you, when you're doing your reading, not just to do a search and find to prove the thing that you're looking for, but let the contemporary documents do the work for you. Let them guide you. And when you're reading them, read them closely. Don't just read, the extensive sale of the Public Advertiser, joined to the variety of channels. This is boring. I'm moving on to the next thing. Read closely. See what this actually means and what the context is for what they're saying. And you may find that there are other avenues to pursue just by a clause that's in a sentence.